covered SilverEfex Pro last week. I'm going to do more of it this week and explain some aspects about it. And I will show you some of the newer features that are in Adobe Camera Raw, which is part of Photoshop, that allows you to, or provides the same, similar, not exactly the same, but very similar aspects of making a black and white image. And I think that they're coming along really well, meaning Adobe. And I think it will be improved as they go forward, and you'll see some of the differences. And I want to also talk about a high key image, and I'll show you what I mean by that as we go through some of it. But I wanted to do one of the images right up front with SilverEfex Pro. And this week with SilverEfex Pro, I'm in Photoshop, and I will go to SilverEfex Pro as my plugin. And the reason and the advantage of doing it as a plugin is that it creates some additional layers. Let me show you what I mean by that and why I think it is such a good way to do it using those additional layers. Hold on 1 minute here. Still had some people coming in. On my screen, you can see this portrait, very, very pretty young woman that I captured from upic.com. I've mentioned a number of times to go to upic.com and view some images. It's a good learning experience there. So I have this image, and I'll take it into SilverEfex Pro by going up to Filter, down at the bottom, Nick Collection, and over to SilverEfex Pro 2. The most difficult part of using SilverEfex Pro 2 is deciding which one of the presets you like more than something else. And I'll show you what I mean by that. If I come to the neutral, which is what you're seeing right now, and just put my cursor on some of these and flip up, look how beautiful that is. 02, that's 002 overexposure, it's called. And you see that, you think, well, it's a little bright, but the advantage of SilverEfex Pro is you have these sliders on the right-hand side that you can use to increase things. In this case, I think just by amplifying, come over to contrast and amplifying the blacks just a little bit, watch her eyes. See the difference of doing that? And this is a really beautiful black and white just by those two changes. Could amplify the whites a little bit to see if that does anything more. Yes, that's very nice. That's a very pretty rendition of this image. If I come down to number 5, which is the one I usually like, it's a little dark overall. So I'll do the overall brightness, brighten it up, but that doesn't give me the same look as what I had by looking at and changing some things. Now, then I get down to number 7, I think, oh, that looks so good. I'll amplify the blacks a little bit, and that really, look at the smoothness to her skin, the aspects of the darkness up here. I can amplify the blacks a little bit more, and it'll bring out some of the dark areas even more so. Her eyes show up very nicely. So I think, oh, that's great. I'll save this one. Then you go down to another one and think, oh, yeah, well, that's pretty neat. I'll come down, scroll down into these presets. Oh, there's one here, number 18. That's, oh, 18 looks so good, but her face isn't bright. Well, in that case, I'll open up the highlights on the right-hand side and open up the midtones on the right-hand side. And I have a beautiful, beautiful representation. Amplify the blacks a little bit. Ah, that's so good. Now save that one. Oh, well, maybe not. Maybe I'll save the next. So you keep doing this. I'm going to come back to this one and I'll save this and show you what I mean in Photoshop. But So that's number 18. But I want to first come down here to 29 that has a border and a blue tinge to it. Come down farther, get a textured sepia tone, a dark sepia tone. Don't like that as much, but look at this one. It's very nicely vignetted with highlights, but let's make it even brighter. So we'll just open up the highlights a little bit and amplify the contrast. Will amplify the whites some. And darken, amplify the blacks so that I get a different contrast. Very, very pretty image. That's number 36. So you keep coming down to these various presets, and you end up, I think, saving multiples, because each time you would then say, click OK, go back, save it, do whatever you need. Here's another one. It has a blue tinge to it. Go back to this one.
Hey, John, I got a question.
Yes, sir.
When you say you're saving these, what is actually happening when you're saving it?
No, you would have to, good question. You can't save them here in SilverEfex Pro. You need to come down to the lower right-hand corner, as I'm going to do right now, and click OK. And that brings it back into Photoshop, because I want you to see why I'm doing them as a plugin. So each time you would need to come back to Photoshop, then go back to SilverEfex Pro, do the next one, come back here, save it. For example, here, I now have this one back in Photoshop, and I want to show you the layers. If you look in the layers palette, you see that the background layer, the color is still there, and I have a new layer, which is black and white. So I could save this by going up to File, Save As, and put it in a folder and put a name on it, and then delete the black and white layer and send the color layer back into SilverEfex Pro. So that's what I would need to do back and forth. One of the advantages of doing a plugin is that you have both of these layers. I will also say my way of saving them is to throw away the color layer, because I don't need to save that. I have that as the original, and I don't need to take up more disk space by saving it that way. So I would delete that layer, go to File, Save As, and save this image. I'm going to bring it back because I wanted to show you another feature. One of the advantages of Photoshop, and one of the techniques that a lot of people have some difficulty learning, is masks. I will put a mask on the black and white layer. Down at the bottom, the third from the left is the mask. So I put a mask on there, and you see it's highlighted with a border around it, and it's white. Anywhere that a mask is white provides full capability of that particular layer. If I paint with black, I'll get the paintbrush down at the bottom of the toolbar. Black is in the foreground color. Anywhere I paint with black, I'm turning off the effect of that layer. So the interesting thing here is that I can turn off that layer, and it will show me, whoop, wrong tool. It will show me, oh no, that is the right tool, hold on. Where I paint, I'm turning off the effect of the black and white. And when I'm turning off that layer, I'm seeing the layer below. So I have an ability to create a whole different look, an entirely different look to that image, combined with black and white and color by using the mask to control the black and white layer. Now I could get much more sophisticated with doing it, but I wanted to show you the advantage of doing that. I think, okay, that was neat, could save that. Come back up to adding a mask, and in this case, maybe I will See, you said, wow, what happened there? If you look over on the layers palette, what is selected by having a highlight border around it is the image. So when I was painting, I'm painting on the image. If I want to paint on the mask, I need to click on the mask to select it. And now you see that there's a highlight border around it. That means now for sure, I have that selected. And when I'm painting on that and I'm painting black, I'm allowing the layer below to show through. So very creative aspects of using Photoshop and the techniques of layer and masking. I want to also go into, I'll come back to creativity, how many ways we can make one image very creative and what we want to do with it. The other is to come up to filters and go to filter gallery. I have that black and white image. Here's another, sometimes I do this. When something isn't doing what you want, and you think, oh, do I have the right tool? Am I on the correct layer? No, I am not on the correct layer. I have the mask selected. I'm on the correct layer, but the mask is selected. If I click on the image on that layer, now I have the pixel selected and come up to filter, filter gallery, and I have texture. See, under the texture drop-down arrow, there's crack floor, grain, mosaic tiles. I clicked on texture, and over on the right-hand side of that, I can change some of the aspects. Do I want to have higher texture in the image? It's just a different way of presenting this image. And at the top, there are, what's that? Artistic, and to do watercolor. Underpainting, no, that doesn't do much. Smudge, and then you have these sliders on the right. My point is you can be very artistic about what you're doing with any one of your images in multiple ways, multiple ways. Colored pencil doesn't look good at all. Dry brush, that's interesting. I'll come back down to texture, which I like a lot. Click OK. Now I have a different look. Click on the mask again, get the paintbrush with black. Paint only where you want some color to come through. Think of all the different options and variations that you have control of creating your image. You made a mistake, John. See that? It's over. Okay, good. So I put white in the foreground, make my brush a little smaller, and paint with white on the mask. Takes away the black that I painted on it, and that controls the black and white image comes through. Look how creative we've been in just that one image, from here to all the different aspects down to this final one. Now, the problem that I've created for you is that you'll spend hours playing with the same scene, the same image, because there are so many variations to it.
John, I have a question.
Yes.
When you were still in SilverEfex and you were saying, oh, I like number 5, let's save it. Oh, I like number 15, let's save it. Is there a place that when you okay it in the corner, does it automatically go to Photoshop, or is there a way in SilverEfex to see compare several ones that you like?
It comes back to Photoshop, and that's where you need to save it. And unfortunately, that it's tedious because each time you have a new version of what you want, you need to go back to SilverEfex Pro. I'm going to do that with this one. You need to go back to SilverEfex Pro, come back to Photoshop, save it, then take it back into SilverEfex Pro, come back. That's why I say you're going to spend a lot of time on images because you'll see so many options, and you think, oh, I like that one. Okay, I'll save that one. So here's one that I had changed the background. Let me take that into SilverEfex Pro. I need to rearrange my screen here a little bit. This was another one that I thought, oh, different ways of seeing this image. So to answer your question overall, here's the 000, that's neutral. Click on 002, that's really interesting, and come over to amplify blacks to bring out the eyes a little more. Now, if I want to save this way, I need to click OK. It will bring it back into Photoshop. You see it's creating another layer called Nick Collection, and it will be black and white in a second. Now I would need to go up to File, Save As, and save this, name it, save it in your folder. Then need to go back to, in your history, go back to Open, or just remove, delete the black and white layer, because now your remaining layer is the color layer. Go back into SilverEfex Pro and do another version.
I see.
Which I will do because there's some interesting additional versions for this image.
John, when you saved it into your file, what format is it saving it in?
You can save it whatever. I'll show that to you in a second, but I always save mine as TIFFs.
Okay. Thank you.
Here's number 5, which is one of the ones I usually go to for a black and white first, but this is a little dense. I can come over to the brightness and open up the overall brightness of the image. And the blacks look fairly good. Amplify the blacks a little bit more. This is coming around pretty nice. So I might save that one and then come back in. Oh, that's sort of bright. Oh, that's really neat. Coming down through these, click this one, 15. No, that's a little too dark. Oh, but I could open up the highlights a little bit. See what that does, the overall brightness. That's very nice. But I want to come down to one of these others down here. Just keep filtering down because they are so neat. Now watch this one. Oh, that's striking. Yes, that's really neat. Open up the blacks a little bit more. I like those. That really looks neat. That is nice. I'll come back to that. That's number 20.
Gosh, John, you're having such a good time.
I tell you, I get them. I can't figure out which one I like best. And I just keep playing with them. Oh, this one. Here, amplify the blacks to give a little more contrast in there. Or if I don't, let's suppose I don't do the amplify blacks here. I take it back into Photoshop, because I don't need to do all the work in SilverEfex Pro. I can come back into Photoshop and use the tools that I have in Photoshop, because I now have a separate layer. And I have that black and white as a separate layer in my layers palette. Now I can come over to my adjustments and come to brightness contrast and open up the brightness here a little bit and do a little bit more contrast. So I can do all additional changes in Photoshop. So you may have come back from SilverEfex Pro, File, Save As, and then do more work, File, Save As, and you keep having multiple versions of this. Oh, I don't like that brightness. I think I'll remove that adjustment layer, and I'll add a different adjustment layer. Maybe I'll add levels just to see what's gone. And by adding levels, look at the histogram in the upper right. You see there's plenty of room to the right-hand side So I'll bring that slider in just up to the histogram. That brightens whites without blowing them out. If I take that slider into the histogram, I'm removing pixels. And I'll take the middle slider, move it to the right a little bit, which creates a little bit more contrast. And maybe I don't want that. Maybe I want to open it up even a little bit more. And then so I have that, I can come over to the burn tool, put it on shadows, and come over to the eyes and just darken those a little bit more on this one, and maybe open up that one.
You're on a different layer, John.
Pardon?
Get to the Nick.
Oh, it didn't do it. Why? I have the right thing, but I'm on the wrong layer. So I have to click onto the pixel layer and do the adjustment. So I will use the burn tool. I'm going too fast, so I'm not paying attention to what I'm doing here. And on shadows, and just darken that eye a little bit more, darken that eye a little more. But also, I think I would want to open up that the right eye, his left eye, come up to this midtones and run the midtones around that a little bit to open that up. So there. And if we look at history to see what I've done with the eyes, there they are. But my point is, you have so many tools to do the work that you want in the image, and so many options that you'll end up doing multiples on any one of these images and saving them. And you asked the question how I save them. File, save as, and down at the bottom, you see TIFF is usually my default, but you can save them as JPEGs, PSDs, PNGs, whatever. I always save TIFFs for this reason. A TIFF is generally accepted by any software program that's out there, not just Adobe software. So TIFF is universal, and TIFF saves the layers, and TIFF saves the maximum number of pixels. If you save it as a JPEG, it'll flatten it, and you will not keep the layers, and it removes a number of the pixels from the image. It compresses it. So I save them as TIFFs.
John,
Yes.
if you say merge visible,
Yes.
I guess the Nick just overrides the background.
Nick overrides the background.
Because if you look at the two layers and you say merge them,
Yes.
it would be a combination of the Nick one and the background.
If I come over here and click on the background layer and the Nick layer and say merge them, it certainly will merge them together. I will no longer have separate layers like that.
So the Nick one overrides the background.
Nick adds to it. It doesn't change the background at all. You notice that the background layer is identical to the way I brought it in.
Okay.
Which is why I think doing it in Photoshop is such a neat way to do it, because I get that extra layer of the black and white. If I do it as a standalone, I don't keep a separate layer. In fact, there are no layers. It keeps it as whatever I save it, a TIFF or whatever. But it's a single image. Yes.
Do you think maybe Lynn was talking about, like, if you were to make the Nick layer 50%, see how it looks, and then if you merge it, it'll be a different merge?
Yes.
Sure.
Well, good, because that's where I'm going next. Good question. One of the things you can do is change the opacity of the Nick layer. So come over here to the right and just lower the opacity of the Nick layer. So now I'm combining the black and white and the color together without doing it as a mask. I'm merging the two. But I wouldn't actually merge them, because if I merge them, I lose the two layers. I can have them work on each other like this, but not actually merging them together. If I use the term and the function merge, it puts them together, and I no longer have two layers.
Thank you, Alvin.
Hey, John.
The opacity is a neat way to do some of it, as well as opacity. Now I combine opacity and the mask. I click on the mask, come over here to get on the toolbar, get black, paint on my mask with black, which means I can bring in some color, more color into the face. I can do all kinds of things with the tools by combining the two packages. Yes,
John, can you just
John,
hide the background and send it to SilverEfex? Will it create another layer without having to saving it or removing your first Nick Collections layer?
yes. The flexibility you have this
John.
way is unbelievable. Yes, sir. Let me
John,
come
can
back.
you use it as a plugin and also as a standalone?
Yes. Yep.
I'm sorry,
Sure
John.
can. Yes,
Can you use it as a plugin and a standalone?
you can.
Okay.
You can use it as both.
As both, okay.
I'm going to come back to this image. I took the opacity, I'm taking the opacity back up, come up again to what I did before and say, oh, go to the filter gallery. And I'll play around with some of the various filters. Let me bring this down. That's not right. Wrong layer. See, I was on the levels layer. That's not what I want. I want to take this layer in there. Filter gallery, textures. And now I can create a very different look on this image by using the textures and creating a very artistic aspect of this. It's all just playing around, knowing where the tools are and what you can do with them.